is our training tip of the week. What we want to talk about is land banks. It's kind of something that have sprung up since about 2005, mid 2000s, really, 2010, and over the last 10, 15 years. There's been a kind of a big change, and there's a lot of inventory that's moved from county inventory into land bank inventory.
Yeah, in fact, this is probably it's probably more common now almost than to find counties that are using land banks than it is to find counties that have a lot of over-the-counter inventory. To help you understand exactly what a land bank is, they are nonprofit organizations that are sometimes set up by the county to help them manage their county held or city held land. Any of these properties that the county ends up essentially owning because it goes through foreclosure, can sit on the books. Sometimes in some places, like in certain cities, they have crazy amounts of inventory. They've got thousands of properties, and a lot of them are old dilapidated houses. Some of them are nice houses. The land banks basically are just nonprofits that the county sets up to help them manage it.
Yeah, so really the purpose of the land bank is to return these properties to productive use, get new owners into them, and really they're set up to meet the different communities' goals. Like Shade was talking about how there's some in these areas where there's a lot of dilapidated property. They want to be able to put these back into productive use. If they need to be torn down, go ahead and do that. So they're really there to manage these tax defaulted properties, because that's not really something the county does.
Yeah, at least they don't have the time to really dedicate to the properties the way that they need. Now, what's interesting about land banks is they are not new. They've been around since the 1930s, and we're really around there to help provide cheap land for housing. But it's really been over the last 10 to 15 years that we've seen the number of land banks just explode. 15 years ago, it was hard to find counties that had land banks, and suddenly they're all over.
Yeah, well, really, in 2009, the Department of Housing and Urban Development issued a report where they started embracing land banks, and a lot of states at that time went ahead and set up land bank programs. And so really since that time, we've seen quite a few of these land banks pop up, with some states having many throughout that state.
Yeah. So question, let's answer this. How do land banks get property? And basically there are a couple of different ways that they get properties. The first one we have here is non-sold tax deed properties, or essentially stuff that doesn't get purchased in the auction becomes county inventory. And so that's one of the ways the land banks get it.
Yeah, another way is through city and county held land. So these could be land that used to be within their inventory. They could be city properties they picked up, in addition to public donations. So a lot of times people will donate the land to the city or to the county, and then at that point they'll put these properties into the land banks and distribute them that way.
Yeah. Now, one thing that's important to note about land banks, or I guess important to understand, is exactly how they work. What their goals are. See, one of the things that's interesting when you're dealing with the county is that you have a party that's selling something, but they don't have any personal interest in how much it sells for. And with a land bank, what happens is this is the first time you have kind of a group that is more heavily involved with the property, and so there are both benefits and drawbacks, really.
Yeah, well, it takes cooperation. It takes cooperation on the local level if it's a county land bank or a city land bank. It also takes a state level. State governments are going to set the rules on the land banks for that state, and then the individual land banks will abide by those rules.
Yeah, so really what it means is that, each land bank can be different, and can have basically different criteria that they set for buying properties, or may decide, different, bid or purchase amounts. It really varies quite a bit from land bank to land bank, as does the kind of inventory you'll find in a land bank. Some counties have lots and others have very little. So, you really have to almost you have to almost deal with each individual land bank to figure out exactly how they sell property. You may need to go on the website and look, or potentially even call them.
Yeah, well, and many of them have pretty good websites set up. It's pretty clear on how they do it. You just need to spend a little time on each one of the websites. Now, land banks can either offer land, building lots, but they can also offer homes as well.
Yeah, really, both types of properties. We obviously see a lot of land and lots that come through tax sales. That is common because those properties it's common to see them get lost to property taxes, but also structured homes. These will include some that are in good condition, some of them that are occupied, even some that are certainly good and usable properties. You can end up in land banks. Although, we love trying to get to auctions, but in some areas, they just don't have enough bidders at the auctions to buy up everything, and so they end up having good inventory in their land bank.
Yeah, well, and when it comes to land, some of these lands, these lots or building lots, pieces of land, may require you to have a development plan in place. So in certain areas, they're going to have more requirements. If you're going to buy this lot, you need to do something with it. You need to be building on it.
Yeah.
Others are going to have, be a lot less lenient, and they're just interested in getting that into a new property owner's hands. So it'll really depend on the individual land banks. And the same thing can be said about the structured properties. Some of them will have requirements that you have to have this rehab done within a set time frame. Usually it's about a year. And things need to be done within that time frame, and the county will go ahead and come back and check. So they may sell the property for really cheap. In fact, sometimes you can buy them for $100. But they're going to require that this rehab be done within a certain time frame. And in fact, many of them will have packets, or already have somebody that's gone through it and checked it out beforehand.
Yeah, in fact, one of the benefits sometimes of land banks is sometimes they have additional property information. Especially with improved properties. Sometimes they'll make an effort to try to figure out exactly what all their inventory is. And so they'll get current photos and stuff. I've seen that in land banks where, they are basically trying to get properties fixed up, and so they'll even have. I've seen before where they have basically estimates on what it would cost to have everything fixed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So as far as land banks, there's about 200 of them. Available in the United States right now. Now, some of these have tons of properties, thousands of properties, while others may just have, half a dozen or a dozen properties. It really depends on how much inventory that individual county has, and they can have them in county, and even cities can set up land banks in some areas as well.
Yeah, in fact, there's a surprising number. I think the number could be much higher than that. It could be double that. Who knows? They've been growing so fast that it's been hard to keep up on just how many there are. Because once they come up in one county, usually many other counties in the area also do it. So you really have to check with each land bank in order to look at their inventory, and some of the things also, we can get better information sometimes on some of the larger land banks. They do have better GIS maps sometimes and better records that make it easier to learn more about the property, or images of the property.
Well,
estimates.
And that's going to be more important if you're going through a big list. I mean, if you only have 5 or 6 properties, it doesn't take too long to go and look at those properties. But if you have a big list, that's where having some of these online maps can make it a lot easier. Like I mentioned, or like Shade might have mentioned before, some of these smaller land banks, they may not have a huge amount of properties. This one here is just a smaller one in central Illinois. So these are some of probably, maybe even a couple of the counties within the area have bounded together. So instead of having the expense of having a land bank, and one thing to mention, most of these are going to be nonprofit. So they're set up to essentially be a nonprofit organization. In fact, I would say probably over 75-80% of them are probably going to be nonprofits.
Yeah. In fact, you can see that in this example that they have right here, it was... they say right there to improve communities by stabilizing and revitalizing property. And this was a teardown, where they tore down a condemned structure, and now it is...
They're probably reselling the lot.
Yep.
In fact, in some of these areas, they're going through and tearing down a lot of these homes because they're really just a they're a nuisance and a safety hazard.
Yeah.
They can be set on fire. There can be all kinds of illegal activities within them. So really, from the county or the city's point of view, it's better to go ahead and tear these properties down, sell the land, and move on from there.
Yeah, it's a fresh start. So this is the list here for the Central Illinois Land Bank Authority. Pretty small list, but we can see some of the information they have right here. They provide us with what city or village the property's in, an address, and then we have a PIN number, and then a link to the GIS on it.
As you're looking up there, it says owner occupied rehab, and I'm not sure exactly what that is, but it kind of reminded me to talk about. A lot of these will have special deals if you are a first-time home buyer or trying to buy property within that area.
Yeah, or if you're local. If you're local, that's one thing it's worth mentioning is that look to see if there are land banks, if there's a land bank in your area, because they always give priority to locals first.
Yeah, well, you can see up there, for owner-occupied rehab, meaning you want to buy it, you want to live in it, or for contractors, so a lot of them will have options like that where, depending if you're looking to buy it for yourself or if you're looking to do it more as an investor.
Yeah. Now, this is a different land bank that we're looking at here. This is the State Land Bank Authority for Michigan, I believe it is.
Yeah, we can see down there at the bottom there's about 2,400 properties available for sale all throughout the individual state. And I believe that, a lot of the individual counties have land banks as well and will have their own division. And I think a lot of those individual county land banks, or at least some of those properties, will be included in here as well. So, this is kind of showing a bunch of the properties that are available throughout Michigan in some of the smaller land banks that are county held.
Yeah. So here, we're looking at this is a home, that is currently in this Michigan land bank.
Yeah. This particular one won't be eligible to be bid on till February 1st. So it's an upcoming property where they're going to be putting it on here on the land bank, and they'll be accepting offers on it. But this particular one it won't be available to be purchased up until February 1st.
Yeah, it's interesting. You see, the image though is from July of this year.
Yeah. Here's just an example of a land bank within that same, a property within that same land bank, an acre parcel, that's essentially eligible to be purchased.
Yeah. And here we have another land bank. This is for Albany County, New York, and this is more like the Michigan, land bank style, where we have, an overhead map, and then we have the properties, also on the right, and then everything is color coordinated, according to, whether they are for sale or whether, it's, somewhere in the process.
Yeah, well, and a lot of the larger land banks use this type of system. If not this exact same one very similar to it.
Yeah. So we can see here, there were about, close to 759 properties in there, but you can see a lot of those are already sold.
Yeah, it's going to include sold properties for sale, all different types. In fact, this first property was right there. We could see was one of the first properties that ended up selling for $8,000.
Yeah, and really, estimated tax balance paid by buyer. So $3,600. Yeah, that's not too bad. That's actually a really great price. It looks like a pretty clean little house.
Yeah, I'm sure it needed work, but essentially you're buying them for under $10,000 at this point.
Yeah.
There's a property that's currently for sale on the land bank for $8,000. Similar type property, that you can pick up. These type of properties are available all throughout the country.
Yeah, with interior images too.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing about these properties is you can go through, you can send your inspector through. A lot of them will already have inspections done. They give you a lineup of everything that needs to be done and the estimated cost. Now, I think if you were doing it yourself, and that's where you need to check with these individual land banks to see what their rules are. Some of them you can do the rehab yourself or hire your own contractors, and I think you could do it for probably cheaper than some of these estimates. But you've got to see what are the individual rules within that land bank.
And here we have a vacant lot that is in that same county that is available currently for $600.
Yeah, a building lot there. Now, one thing we'd go through and do the same thing, check to make sure it's buildable, but it does look like it. In fact, if you're looking at some of the lots next to it, it's even a little bit bigger than some of the other ones.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, how do you buy, these properties in land banks? So there are a couple of different systems that land banks will use, but most land banks are going to have a minimum bid amount or a purchase price that they will they'll have, or they may have you submit offers. Some may do that, but in many cases, though, they'll actually just set a minimum purchase price.
Yeah, well, even like the ones we saw, that home available for $8,000, the lot available for $6,000. Some of these land banks, especially smaller land banks, are going to focus more on people that are looking to buy a home or buy land for themselves. A lot of the larger ones are going to be focusing to anyone, an investor.
Yeah. So, a few things to remember about land banks. Really, one of them is just that, with each land bank, you're going to need to learn what some of the details, specifically how they operate, what they allow, what they don't, because they are literally as varied as the tax sales themselves in terms of what they allow and how what the process might look like to buy properties from them.
Yeah, definitely. There can be a great way for people that are living within an area to find property. So it's worth seeing, is there a land bank available in my area, and what type of property are available, and if if there is homes, and if that may be an option.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking to see if there is a land bank in your own area, because that's always a great place to start looking for properties.
Well, and it's a great way for investors to be able to buy property and pick up property as well.
Yeah.
Let's go back one thing real quick as well, because I want to show the land banks real quick. Just
that's right. So let's do that.
Just because we talked about them.
Yeah.
The land banks, there's not really a place you can go to get all the land banks, at least that we can find online. And so that's part of the reason we provide them for our members on our membership program. You can see how certain states have a lot, Georgia has quite a few, where another state may only have 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all kinds of different ones. Some of them are going to be in the big cities. Some of them will have tons of property. Some of them will be a bit smaller. But there really is probably 25 different states that offer some type of land bank.
Yeah. Yeah, really. And again, we can automatically link to any of these. And, with the land banks, land bank properties for sale is what we're usually looking for here. And, you can see that sometimes they have...
They go further, they have their list. Keep going up. Oh, you're on Albany. I think we were looking at the other one. Albany.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, so this one, they actually, in Albany, they have an interactive map and...
you can download the list, or you can click on the interactive map. And the list probably has the new ones that they're putting out for sale. This is going to include ones that have sold and, ones that are for sale, depending on their status.
Yeah, so we can see we have... we could look, and we have for sale buildings, and then we have some for sale lots. So basically like the green and the blue, if we wanted. So there's one building here that is, that is for sale currently. And look at that, so it's already been kind of gutted out basically so that it's just framing in there.
Yeah.
It looks like asking price of $5,000, built in 1920.
Yeah. Well.
And you can see all these others here. Current assessment on these ones here.
Yeah, a lot of opportunity, to check out and see what's available in your own area or from an investing standpoint as well.